Is it just me, or is like everything looking exactly the same these days? I swear I go on Instagram, YouTube. I don't go on TikTok, but I can only imagine the image across all of these platforms. It's all the same. I honestly feel like we've kind of got to like a bottleneck when it comes to like the technological advancements of cameras. I literally can't tell the difference between like a cinema camera and a phone on some of these platforms. And it kind of like asks the question, like, how can you actually as a creator stand out and make your work look different and actually have your own kind of stamp and your own look on your footage? I swear, I'm not going to lie, I'm just craving a different look. I want something different. I want something to feel different. I'm even trying to make things look a bit different with this lighting, which actually ain't. I mean, it's all right. Got my key, got my backlight, some bits in the back, and that's it. And I got a little highlight because, you know, I want to look alive. I don't want to look dead. But I genuinely want to make my image stand out and look different these days. So something that I've personally done and that I think creators are actually going to go towards now that we've actually got affordable glass is moving over to anamorphic lenses. Now, if you don't know what anamorphic lenses are, I'm going to go into those in a second. But I actually picked up my very first set of anamorphic lenses, and those are the Lawoa Nanomorph 1.5 times EF mount Super 35 anamorphic lenses. I used them on my recent short film Dive. If you haven't gone and seen that, go and check it out because it's actually my favourite piece I've ever made on the channel. And I'd really appreciate if you went over there, drop me a little comment if you liked it. If you didn't, no problem. Give me some abuse instead. I'd really appreciate that as well. But to be honest, I didn't pick them lenses just because I wanted it to have like a really nice different look. I actually chose them because I wanted to give my audience an experience that those lenses, the characteristics of those lenses, actually allows the audience to kind of feel when they're watching the video. When you're picking anything to do with your production, whether it's the camera, the lenses, the lighting, the audio, the action in front of the camera, the whole point of that is to give your audience a sense of the story and take them on an experience. And for me, using anamorphic lenses, I wanted to give the audience an experience where everything felt somewhat distorted. Now, if you've seen the film, you'll understand what I'm talking about, because there is a scene, without giving too much away if you haven't seen it, where we go underwater. And the whole point of the film is actually about being underwater during an edit, weirdly enough, as weird as that actually sounds. And when you think about it, when you're underwater and you open your eyes, parts of your vision are blurry, parts of it are sharp, and you're looking around and not everything's right. You get kind of these distorted, out of focus parts of your vision, and that was a characteristic of anamorphic lenses that I really wanted to aid in my film. An anamorphic lens is a lens that has a lot of different characteristics compared to a spherical lens. Right now you're looking at my 16-35 Sony G Master Mark 1. I'm not quite bougie enough for a Mark 2 just yet. And on a spherical lens, everything is pretty normal. Everything looks right. There's no particular distortion around the edges. And the bokeh, if you look at that nice little green light over there, the bokeh is circular. Also, you'll notice that the middle of the frame is sharp all the way to the edge of the frame when you've got a good spherical lens. But when it comes to anamorphics, some of these characteristics are slightly different. Now, the main characteristic of an anamorphic lens is the fact that the image is actually squeezed. Now, anamorphic lenses come in different squeeze factors. You've got like 1.3, 1.33, 1.5, 1.8, 2 times squeeze. My particular lenses, the Lawoa Nanomorphs, are a 1.5 squeeze. So once that's de-squeezed, you'll notice we get a much wider aspect ratio, and that is when we start to see all of these different characteristics. Now, the first characteristic of an anamorphic lens is the bokeh shape. As I said, in the spherical lens, you get circular bokeh, but in anamorphic lenses, you get this oval-shaped bokeh. Now, when you're shooting anamorphic lenses, you're shooting wide open, you've got a nice amount of depth of field. Everything that's out of focus is nice and stretched, and it just gives it a little bit of a different look. And in my opinion, it kind of gives it this like distorted look around your image. And this distortion was actually something that I wanted in this particular film, to give the illusion of kind of being distorted and underwater. Now, another characteristic of an anamorphic lens is the focus fall off. Typically with anamorphic lenses, the center of the frame is nice and sharp, and as you move out towards the edges of the frame, that sharpness slowly rolls off and actually gives a really nice, beautiful look. That's why a lot of anamorphic shots kind of frame up centrally. And as you can imagine, when you're underwater, eyes open, Sometimes the center of what you're looking at is sharp, and then around that is all blurry. And that is obviously just another characteristic of an anamorphic lens that I wanted the audience to kind of feel and experience during my film. Now, the next characteristic is distortion. Now, you actually get distortion on your lenses at the top. You usually kind of get the fisheye barrel at the top, but on the edges, you typically kind of get this inward version, which kind of gives you that pincushion look. Now, in my opinion, it's not massive on my taste. I'm not too bothered about having too much distortion. Does look cool, does look very nice and different from your typical aspherical lens, but it is something to be aware of, because I actually ran into a few issues when I was shooting in these interior locations in Norway. I'm going to leave the guy's link in the description because he was such a nice geezer. His name was Peter, and he owns this nice little lodge in Norway. Super nice geezer. When I was shooting them straight lines, I was getting this dreadful distortion, and it was really kind of like taken away from the feeling of being in the scene. It was kind of a bit too distracting. So for one of my shots, I did have to jump back on a spherical lens, and it kind of like broke my heart that I couldn't shoot 110% anamorphic. There was one shot where I had to use spherical lenses, otherwise that shot just would have been ruined. So that is a characteristic that you really need to think about when it comes to anamorphic lenses. Vignetting is very, very common when it comes to anamorphic lenses. If you don't know what vignetting is, you should. It's basically when the edges or the outside of the frame are really, really dark, and it makes a slight exposure change throughout your entire image. The center of your frame might be nice and exposed, but as we move out, we do get these kind of dark circles around the image. And that's something that's very, very typical of anamorphic lenses. My Lawoa nanomorphs do have quite a bit of vignetting, but in my opinion, I quite like it. I do quite like the fact that the center of the frame is nice and focused, kind of like that focal point that's nice and exposed is in the center, and we're kind of drawing the eye towards the center of the frame. And a lot of my shots, as you can see, are centered centrally. So yeah, that kind of made sense for me. And you know what else makes sense to me? Having a plan on the best audio and visual assets platform, Artlist. So if you've been living under a rock and you don't know Artlist, Artlist is a royalty-free assets platform with thousands of high-quality music tracks, along with sound effects and stock footage. Finding the right track can literally make or break my project, and Artlist makes it so easy because it actually uses AI by going through my collections, and then it can basically just recommend me tracks that it already knows I'm going to like. So it just saves me a bunch of time. Artlist also has a huge library of sound effects to really level up your sound design during your films. And they've got a wide variety of incredible stock footage. I've been using Artlist now for about 7 years, and I honestly reckon it's got to be the best investment that I've ever made for my business. Getting tracks when I first started out was such a nightmare, not only for me, but for my clients as well. So when I make a video for one of my client is also covered with that track from Artlist to save them getting into any, legal issues. And that's what we all want at the end of the day, innit? And thankfully, Artlist has a huge range of subscription plans. So whether you're a starting out creator or if you're a big enterprise, there's a plan for you so that you can get the most out of the platform. So if you're looking for highly curated music, sound effects, stock footage, plugins and templates, then head over to the first link in my description where you can go and check out Artlist and their platform. Really is one of the best things that I've ever done for my YouTube channel and as a filmmaker in general. So Artlist, thank you very much for sponsoring this video. And back to the final characteristic of anamorphic lenses. And finally, the big one, which is flares. Now, I'm sure everyone here has heard of anamorphic flares. They're essentially flares that just go all the way across your screen, and sometimes they're a bit naughty, and sometimes they ain't. I'm personally not a massive fan of anamorphic flares. They're just too much. They kind of distract you a little bit too much. And if I'm framing up a shot, I don't want this like mad line going across my frame. But it is just something that's really typical of anamorphic lenses. And some people really, really like them. Like if you watch like sci-fi films and that, you usually get like a big blue streak going all the way across your frame. And in some circumstances, that actually works really well for the story. But for a lot of my work, I don't really use a lot of unnatural light. I'm typically just shooting sunrises, sunsets. Most anamorphic lenses do come with different flare colours. Now, I personally went for that amber colour on the Lawoa Nanomorphs because obviously it makes sense if I'm shooting a lot of red or warm colours. It doesn't really make sense to have a massive big blue streak going across the frame. It's like, these characteristics of anamorphic lenses give us such a different look. And in my opinion, it's a look that I want to go for more and more going forward because I want my work to stand out. I'm just going to be honest. I don't really want it to look like everything else. And the thought of having a different look, just seeing a frame that looks so different from everything else and everything else that I've been shooting recently, is generally just quite exciting for me. I'm going to be honest. It isn't always about the story. However, I will try my absolute best, and I pretty much do. There's very, very rarely been a time where I've just wanted to go for something that looks better over the story. And I understand in today's day and age, content isn't all about the story. And sometimes people just want their work to stand out and they just want to get that quick, instant hit. And that's cool, you know, but try and make it look a bit different. I have noticed more and more creators are actually moving on to anamorphic lenses because we've got so many affordable options in 2024. It's actually mad to think that we've kind of come to this point where everything looks so good that I'm now actually being like, right, I need to shoot anamorphic for my work to look different. It's quite a crazy time to be in, and actually to be able to buy some lenses that are somewhat affordable, especially if they're like a good investment. In my opinion, lenses are such a good investment. They hold out for years. As long as you look after them, they're going to work. You can adapt them on different cameras, and they actually hold their value, not like bodies, mate. Bodies are such a bad investment. Don't get me wrong, if you're using your camera for work and you're earning money off of it, brilliant investment. But after 2-3 years, that camera's kind of done, which is a bit of a shame, really, because at the end of the day, you spend so much dough on your camera, it just don't last. And that is why, personally, I don't mind investing in glass, because at the end of the day, I've got still one of the first ever lenses that I bought. This is the Samyang EF 14mm 2.8. Absolutely cracking lens. And it still works now. I can still adapt it onto my Sony camera. I can adapt it onto my Blackmagic, and it works a treat. So, yeah, I've looked after it. Well, actually, I haven't really looked after this one too well. A little bit dusty, but at the end of the day, it will be sweet. And you can just see how these lenses actually stand the test of time, and you can use them across different bodies wherever you go when it comes to your camera. So for me personally, it's not a problem investing in lenses. But for you, it might be. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, you know, that's what I want to do, and it's my channel. I can say what I want. Anyway, people, thanks so much for watching my video. It's been a while. Don't worry, there's tons of content coming. I've got quite a few projects coming up that I'm actually shooting on them Lawoa Nanomorphs, which I'm really excited to do. That's coming your way, mate. You're lucky people. I'm just messing you lot. Anyway, have a lovely day. And as always, I'll be catching you lot in the next one.